Good afternoon. This is a special Board of Trustees meeting for El Paso Community College District, and it is being held today, Wednesday, October the 5th, 2022, and it is now the time?
4:23.
4:23, thank you. This meeting will be held is being held in the Administrative Service Center Auditorium, Room A300 at 9050 Viscount Boulevard, El Paso, Texas 79925, and is viewable through the EPCC YouTube channel. And you may refer to the link https://www.youtube.com/user/goepcc. Welcome to everybody, and Mr. Ortega, will you lead us in the pledge?
Yes. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Ms. Pam, can you call the roll, please?
Yes, ma'am. Mr. Uxer.
Here.
We've been notified that Mrs. Robles is going to be late, so she's not here. Ms. Sanchez.
Here?
Ms. Nájera.
Here?
Mr. Haggerty is also going to be here later. Dr. Graham.
Here.
So we do have a quorum.
So we have a quorum. Public comment. The El Paso Community College TASB policies limit individual presentations for any individuals to 3 minutes under TASB BDB local. Do we have anybody signed up?
No, ma'am.
No one? Okay. So number 5.1, discussion and action items.
Item 5.1, discussion and take possible action to adopt criteria and guidelines for use in redistricting the El Paso County Community College Board districts.
Dr. Graham, if I
Yes.
may, I'd like to give a presentation and provide the board and Dr. Serrata an update. As you'll recall, during the August board meeting, the board provided instructions to college staff and legal counsel to help and assist in the creation of a public redistricting committee or commission. And to that end, we, through the help of various individuals, including AVP Carrie Moe, we provided a media blitz, if you will, to try to see if we could get public engagement and interest for individuals in the community to serve on this public redistricting committee. There was a lot of advertisement that was done by college staff. There was paid advertising that was done to El Diario del Paso, El Paso Inc., Spotlight El Paso, West Texas County Courier, El Paso Herald Post, as well as public outreach through various online media forms, including EPCC's website and different internet pages to provide as much output and as much information out there in the community. In fact, El Paso Matters recently published a very good article that I think was very helpful, in fact, to try to generate as much public notice and knowledge about the possible formation of a public redistricting committee here at EPCC. To that end, I believe you have in front of you a binder that has information of the various applicants that submitted an application demonstrating interest in serving on this public redistricting committee. In short, I could tell you that we received 11 applications. The criteria that we received from the board at the August meeting is if you're a member of the public interested in serving as a member of the public redistricting committee, you have to be a registered voter and you have to be a resident in the El Paso County Community College District. These individuals, based on our review, have satisfied that criteria. These are 11 individuals that are members and residents, I should say, of the various districts within El Paso Community College's boundary. We received applicants from every district save District 6. As you could see on your binder, we received one application from District 1, 3, 4, and 7, just one. And we received multiple applicants from, applications for District 2 and District 5. For District 2, we received 3 applications. For District 5, we received 4. And as I've said earlier, for District 6, there were no applications for those. So you have the applications in front of you. At this point, what the college staff would need is to get some guidance from you in terms of what would be the criteria and the guidelines used for appointing some of the members to this public redistricting committee.
Thank you, sir. So with that, we have 11, right? 11 individuals?
That's correct.
That have applied. Do we have some discussion?
So there's some individual, so I know on like some of them, I think that we only have one applicant, but then I think on others, we have multiple applicants. And so, and then of course, we had one district that there wasn't an individual who resided in that district that applied. And so I think what would be helpful, and I don't know if this is something that we could do, but my understanding is I think we could go into executive session to discuss and to deliberate anybody that we would appoint. I don't know if that's allowed or not, based on the applications that we received, and then to come out to make that decision. I don't know if that's permissible or not, but I was just wanted to know if that
We
that
could
be
certainly
done.
do so under Section 551.071 of the Texas Government Code to have that discussion. But certainly the board is also capable of making those decisions and having that, certainly any decision has to be obviously open, but any discussion, whether it's public policy or anything like that, you could certainly have it in open session, if you will, but you do have the ability to have that discussion
Okay.
behind closed doors.
Yeah, I mean, I'm fine either way. I mean, I think maybe what is helpful is that, you know, and I don't know how you all feel, but I mean, I think for the individuals that applied for that particular precinct, I think because they were the only individual that had applied and they fulfilled that initial criteria, that would mean to me, then I would move to appoint those individuals that had, that had already been, that were the only individual that actually had applied for that particular section. I think that maybe that's easier to do. I don't know if we do make a motion on that right now or we wait until the end. But I'm thinking that's probably the easiest thing. But then next we go to, I guess, the other applicants who are on district number 2 and then district number 5, which there were 3 and then 4. And I would probably suggest that maybe we have, maybe consider appointing another individual that maybe applied under those 2 districts to fulfill Ms. Piña's district in terms of a representative for the redistricting commission, since they has shown interest. I don't know if they applied specifically because they were interested in that particular district or they had an invested interest, but maybe that's an ask, and we could maybe have, a listing of the, 2 individuals that would look to do that.
In response to that question,
Yes,
Trustee Sanchez, we did provide in the application for the applicants to express why they wanted to serve on the commission or on the committee. So that information is available to the extent that they provided the information.
Okay.
So hopefully that could give you a little bit more guidance in terms of whether they were persuaded just because they wanted to represent their district or
Yeah.
just gain some experience or become more engaged in the community.
I appreciate the fact that all of them applied, all
too.
11 of them, and I would be of the opinion that maybe we should consider keeping all of them.
Yeah.
If they took the time to apply and they have the interest. And yes, we can seek maybe another one for Ms. Piña's area, or, see if there's another one that's available. I do want to acknowledge and appreciate the college effort to make the information available to the public and everything that was done to publicize this. So I do appreciate that effort was done. And for the record, Mrs. Robles has joined us. Did you have a question, Ms.
No, I
Robles?
was just going to point out that Ms. Robles is on the
So would there be a disadvantage in including all of them?
The only thing I can think of, I don't think there's a disadvantage at all. I mean, I think I'm supportive of the idea. The only thing I'm thinking of is in terms of how quorum would be made, right? So there's 11 individuals, so we have to make sure that these individuals would be committed to showing up to each of these meetings. I think, but if they applied, I think that says something. Because in my mind, I was also thinking about an alternate as well, right? So we have 11, so if we choose each one of them, I mean, they're conceivably then all members of the commission with no alternates. But there's 11 of them, so that's an odd number, so that helps in the event that there's a tie in terms of like trying to figure out a particular map or not. That was the only thing I would consider, just in making quorum, in having a larger group. Maybe that's not so much of an issue anyway if we had to appoint 7. I mean, that's 4 additional individuals.
Yeah,
but it's gonna
the
be
other
difficult.
consideration that perhaps would be relevant in your discussion, whether you want to do it here or an executive session, is also at the August board meeting, the board discussed that it was interested in having a public meeting at every single district. And so the bigger the group, the more difficult, to your point, Ms. Sanchez, of the difficulty in having a meeting in every district. One thing that you could do is if you elect the 11 individuals or a different number, is to perhaps maybe limit the number of meetings or perhaps take away that requirement and focus instead on providing a deadline by when, which is the other consideration I would respectfully ask that you consider, is the deadline by when the proposed plan from the committee should be submitted to the board for consideration. It seems to me that if we're in the first week of October, they would have the entire month of October, the entire month of November, and by the November board meeting, which if I'm not mistaken, I think is November 29, you're giving them roughly 2 months right before the holidays to provide a plan for the board and for its consideration. So if you provide a specific number of how often they're supposed to meet or where they're supposed to meet, in my humble opinion, I think it's going to make it a little bit more cumbersome for them to be able to achieve quorum, to work with college staff, with legal counsel and their respective schedules. So that may be perhaps a difficulty. And if you decide to elect a large number to comprise your public redistricting committee.
And quite frankly, we really don't have time to, as Dr. Graham suggested, is wait a little bit longer and see if somebody else wants to apply for Ms. Pina's area, correct? Because this is a time-sensitive matter. We need this done immediately.
Right. I mean, the plan has to be approved by the board by, if I'm not mistaken, January 17 of 2023. And certainly any viable candidate, I think, would benefit from being able to receive the information as soon as possible to determine what district he or she will be in, and that certainly helps in any future campaigning. So certainly the sooner that you could get it, I think the more advantageous it would be for members of the board and any other individual that may be interested in running for any open seat.
And I think that, the applicants come from a really good background. There's females, there's people from all cross sectors of, different industries. So I think having them all would quite frankly be beneficial. So I'm not opposed to that, but maybe then lowering then the number of meetings. But here's what I was kind of thinking, and I don't know if you all have already figured this out, but in terms of how this process will go out, like say, for example, we've already decided, like the commission, like one of the things that I was hoping that they would receive would be a legal orientation, right? That these are the legal issues that you all have to follow. This is what it means to have a community of interest. These are the deviation factors that you all have to abide by. So I would definitely ensure that there is at least a mandatory meeting for that legal orientation. And I think from there you set out then, and we will have, we're going to only have, I guess, 4 meetings. These meetings will be at these locations, and you have to go. And so you set up when the date and that time is so that they all are aware and can make the plans ahead of time that this is how it will go. I guess at the end of the day, they'll make that final recommendation because we know we have to by law. We can't give up that authority for them to make that decision. But I think that, quite frankly, their participation in those meetings, their participation in their discussions and whatever that final plan is, quite frankly, does go to then what the board decides at the end, whether or not, you know, there was an invested participation, invested review, invested look at what those plans were, and I think that factors into whether or not we then move forward with the maps that they would recommend. So it's really a robust process, but really a process that they would be invested in, and to ensure that it all has been thoroughly looked at and reviewed. But my interest, quite frankly, is ensuring that they do at least know what the minimal legal standards are that they need to abide by before going into their
Right. So what we were envisioning in response to your question, Ms. Sanchez, is to have that initial meeting, to your point, and have our redistricting counsel or consultant appear at that meeting, provide them with the legal orientation so they understand what the legal standard is, for them to be able to see what the census results were for the 2020 census, for redistricting council to also provide to the committee the proposed plans that they've showed to the board, so they could at least have a foundation from which to work by if they choose to start from there. I was also envisioning that when the committee meets, one of the probably first orders of business is to perhaps appoint the chair and a vice chair. So there could be some type of order, protocol, and decorum in that meeting and any future meetings. And once they, I think, get they introduce themselves to each other, there's the appointment of a chair, a vice chair, they're introduced to college staff, to legal counsel, to our redistricting consultant, to the surveyor demographer that I think will be very key in helping us modify any proposed plans that we get. Once they review the proposed plans from our redistricting consultant council, I suspect that perhaps the next meeting is for them to invite members of the public. Certainly members of the public will be available to attend and participate in this first initial meeting, but perhaps having a second meeting, or however many meetings I think that the committee deems appropriate based on their schedules, based on the information that they've received.
Right.
And in that second or any subsequent meetings, for them to at least know that they've got a specific deadline that's been hard set by the board. So if it takes one additional meeting or more meetings like that for them to meet, then they could meet wherever they think is convenient on EPCC property, allow members of the public to come forward and present any public opinion or provide any proposed plans that they could have in a town hall format or setting, and for them to take all of that into account and provide a proposed recommendation to the board for the board to consider. I would recommend by the end of November, by November 29, when the board meets during the November meeting.
Any other ideas, discussion? Mr. Oxer?
I'm just trying to envision the sequence and the mechanics. So I would think that we would have the initial meeting that touched all those administrative and organizational details, and then would we release it, the authority, to the committee? Those, and right now I presume that we're talking about the 11 people, release it to them for them to determine if they need another meeting, or if they're satisfied that night, or up to them to determine if they need one or more meetings, and then that would be at their discretion with the appropriate approval from appropriate support from the community college. I mean, there's some things that maybe, I don't know, maybe come something that it would be difficult for the community college to do. But what it says is that once we had that initial meeting, the rest of it is sort of up to this committee to determine, with the provision that, and I think we want to make it clear that we started at this point because this is when we had the authority to actually start the redistricting consideration, and the end point is a hard point set again by the law. So it's the requirements of the process outside community college. We're not shortening or trying to accelerate this because of whatever reason we make, this calendar we've been given. So is that correct?
That's correct. That's certainly the thought process. I think to at least require one meeting and provide a deadline by when they're supposed to submit their proposed plan to the college. And perhaps the wisdom in this is to provide the details in terms of how many times they're going to meet, where they're going to meet, what resources they need in order for them to come up with a proposed plan for the college. Because if you provide limitations or you provide a requirement in terms of how many times they're supposed to meet, you could be in a situation where despite their best efforts, they may not be able to because of people's schedules or different things that could come up, especially if you decide to go with 11 individuals. And I suspect that you don't want to be in a position where maybe this committee will come back and say, well, we're certainly trying to meet your requirement and meet at all these different campuses or all these different instances, but we can't do it despite our best efforts. Could we get an extension? And now it perhaps puts you in a tougher place at that point. If you say you've got the responsibility to, at a minimum, meet once, and then at that point, to your point, Mr. Auxer, they could make a decision at that point if that's what they elect, because they've decided that the proposed plan that the redistricting council provided is satisfactory, or maybe somebody else comes with a different plan that is satisfactory to them, whether it's an individual committee member or a member of the public. And at that point, they could decide based on their schedules and needs how often and where they should meet. That would be my humble recommendation, certainly for your consideration.
Given that, I have one thing. I look at our meeting and what we do is at each one of our meetings we say, hey, there's only 7 of us, and we say, let's look at the calendar. What? No, I have this. No, when we're talking about 11 people that don't even know each other, are we going to tell them they have to meet this date, and if they don't meet that date, then they're not going to be on the committee? I mean, how do we even set up the first meeting to set a meeting?
Right. I think there's got to be perhaps a liaison from the college to notify these individuals that they've received an appointment and to provide them the contact information for them to be able to communicate with each other. And I think that first meeting, we certainly need to have a college liaison to help them organize and to certainly help them find a time to meet, a location for them to meet, and for them to reach out to this individual within the college if they have any questions, they need resources, or anything like that. That's why, to me, it's important certainly to have a committee or commission chair where that person could certainly also be the liaison from the public committee to contact anybody from the college in the event that they need any questions answered or they need some resources.
Back to that one point. So we say we're going to have an initial meeting and we have the liaison. And the liaison then talks to everybody. Is it going to be that liaison's responsibility then to aggregate the calendars and say the consensus is that 9 of you agree this one date, and so we say those 9 are on though, and the other 2 we appointed you, but you can't be because you don't meet the meeting? How's that very first meeting going to go? We only got 2 months to work out, and if there's going to be busy stuff for everybody to do, how are we going to set it up? I mean,
I think that we can use the technology. If they're not available to come in physically in person, we can,
But if
provide
they
a.
just don't do it, I mean, if they don't come up to an agreement that all 11 say, yeah, that's a good date, do we have the authority to say, that's the best date, you got to meet this date, or give us one date?
Well, I think that our job here is more to agree on the committee and who's going to be on the committee and empower them to carry out the task. Because we have no control over, when they're available and all that, but certainly.
We're going to let them decide when that first meeting is?
Yes, and the president can arrange who's going to be the liaison that's going to work with them. But I just received a message from someone that's interested in serving in District 6, except that he just found out about it, so he wasn't aware, and he wants to be considered. So I don't know if we want to also accept that applicant.
I think because there was a deadline, I think we should probably respect the deadline.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
if, I mean, I think that's, because everybody else here, I mean, I know, and it's like, we unfortunately, we don't have anybody from District 6, but I think we should probably just respect the deadline.
I agree.
That's just my opinion, but, I mean,
And not include anybody from District 6, as long as later on there's not a problem that we didn't include anybody.
Yeah, they're looking, I think, at all of the maps, everybody that's here, that's on this list, but
And Ms. Mo could correct me if I'm wrong, but I think or at least the call for applications was out there for at least 2 weeks.
It went out, it was made public on the website and went out to the media on September 15th.
so just,
With
I don't know
the-
if you
with
were on
the-
the microphone or not, but what you're saying, it was made public to the, you're going to give her the microphone, just to make sure we get it on the record.
Okay, but the deadline started September 15th, and the drop dead date
The
was,
deadline was October 4 at noon.
And it was available to the public beginning September 15th.
15 and 4 is 19 days. Shy of 2 days shy of 3 weeks.
Yes, sir.
Any other discussion, Ms. Robles? Do you have any?
Well, I look at the names on this list, and I can tell you they are very responsible persons. I have known them, I have worked with them, with the majority of them, and if they applied, they recognize that there's a commitment, and I don't really worry too much. I'm sure that they will be able to come to an agreement what is the best day to meet, to set up their calendar. Because like I said, I look at them and they're members of the community that have been involved in quite a few activities at the community level. So I don't really worry about that because I feel that since they applied, they recognize that they are making a commitment. And so that's my point of view.
Thank you. Ms. Nájera?
I agree. I mean, I just think as long as, all of them obviously have interest in it. They wouldn't have applied if they weren't, interested in it. It's been out there for quite a while. So I agree. Let's just have I think we should have all 11 of them serve.
Okay. So I think we have consensus to,
Do you need a
Do you need a
motion?
motion?
yes.
So just so that I'm clear on what we need us to decide today, so we need to decide or take action to appoint, and then do we then give just direction to you and to staff to ensure that there's at least one meeting, like an initial meeting, you'll put that out on the notices for the persons that are selected, and then at that meeting, they'll need to come up with their criteria, like Dr. Graham mentioned, they are empowered to come up with their own criteria and agenda on how they're going to meet, how they're going to do this. And I think that goes with the spirit of why we decided to do the redistricting commission, is to really keep it hands-off and just let them go with it. They're fully capable, I believe, of doing that, with at least having some meeting. And I think the charge is at the end, right, to have a final report by the November 29th deadline. I think that's at least the direction that we could give to staff. But I'll make a motion to appoint the 11 people that were provided in the backup. Do you want me to read each of their names, or?
Would you
Yeah.
please?
So those individuals were Paul Arciniega, Brandon Burt, Julian Hita, Emma Acosta, Raul Lerma, George Ibarra, Daniel Bueno, Wesley Lawrence, Joshua Carta Guerra, Inocente Quintanilla, and Cynthia Renteria.
Second the motion.
A motion has been made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries. So, Dr. Serrata, you will be appointing someone?
Yes, Dr. Graham, and members of the board, we will work with legal counsel, we'll work with Mr. Ortega in his office, and we will reach out and inform the members that have been appointed by the board. We will schedule an initial meeting with them. We'll ensure the legal orientation is provided by legal counsel, and then we will work with them to schedule the meetings with a November 29th deadline that they will report back to the board with their final recommendations.
And Mr. Ortega, you'll make sure that it is very clear to the committee that the final decision rests with the board.
Absolutely. We'll certainly communicate that, Dr. Graham.
Thank you, sir. Okay, do we need an executive session?
I don't think so.
No? If we don't need an executive session, then we are done.
We're adjourned.
Okay, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And